You're listening to episode 804 of the Father Bills podcast. Welcome back. This week's episode is entitled Be Open, given on the 23rd Sunday in Ordinary Time, 2021. Imagine yourself on a vacation in a foreign country where nobody speaks your language. Have you done that before? Maybe not, but imagine this. Some of us in our community, when I shared this homily at our Spanish Mass, know this quite well. I got all these nods like, yeah. I remember studying Spanish in 1998, and I was sent to Mexico for almost 2 months. I had 2 years of Spanish at seminary, and I had German 2 years, or 1 year, maybe 2 years, I can't even remember, in high school. But when I get to the airport in Morelia, Mexico, I might as well not have had any of this because I was pretty much worthless when it came to trying to speak Spanish. I remember stepping off the plane with another seminarian who knew less Spanish than I did. Quite the scene. And boy, did we stick out. Especially me, blonde hair, blue eyes, white skin. A friend of mine who lives in Morelia was supposed to come and pick us up. He was scheduled, he agreed, and then he'd take us to our individual houses. However, he was not at the airport. And we waited. And waited. As flights came in and flights went out. Eventually, we were all there by ourselves. Panic was setting in, like, I don't even know how to call anybody. I only have dollars. I have no pesos. You can't stick a dollar bill into a phone booth. And there's nobody at any desks to exchange my money. There's nobody there. Finally, in this empty terminal, a man walks up to us, speaking English. He approached us and asked if we need help. I was like, English? And it was excellent English. And I was like, where are you from? I'm from Oakland, California. Okay. There's a lot that was said in that moment. Or I should say, a lot was received. I told him that my friend had not picked us up, and I only had US dollars, had no pesos. I can tell you, I felt so abandoned, so helpless. I couldn't even speak on the phone if I could dial it. We were never taught how to have phone conversations in any of my Spanish classes, but we were taught how to recite the creed and do some other prayers. I've had to learn certain words. Well, I'll just let you think about this one. Since then, in the confessional. But it's a conundrum because some of them I can figure out because they're cognates, because they sound like English words. Other words I've just had to figure out by context in the conversation, but I've had to pick up some words in the confessional. And as you might know, the confessional is absolute. I cannot share anything that's happened in the confessional, so I'm in a conundrum. I just learned how to say a word. Is that okay? I hope so, because I do use Spanish words, and some of them I learned in the confessional. But in this moment, I was effectively disabled, pragmatically unable to do anything. No food, no nothing, just our luggage. And this wonderful gentleman who came up to us, who was apparently visiting family, and he offered then to call my friend. After telling him about my financial situation, he offered to pay for it. Which we're talking pesos. This is not a lot of money, but when you have nothing, anything is better. So he called, we got picked up, and life continued on. The earth started turning again. Weeks later, I still struggled to say anything in Spanish, and the family with whom I was living were so compassionate, yet I couldn't speak much to them. I even forgot English words. Trying to think an English word and then translate it into Spanish, I would be dumbfounded, speechless. Now you may know I'm an extrovert. This is torture. Not just distressing. I'm being forced to be an introvert. I can't share anything about what's going on. I can cry. I guess they'll figure that one out. But they were so kind. A family I was with on my second journey there were so wonderful. Yet still it was scary. At this time I was now a priest, the second time in Morelia, and I was at the Church of St. Anne, figure that, where there was about 600 people plus in the church. And I'm bumbling through the Mass. And I'm afraid and scared. If anybody asked me questions, I don't know what I'd say. And then something broke. I don't know if it was the chair or what it was, but I sat down on my chair, which was on a little podium, and I fell backwards. The whole chair just lodged itself, and I went, just tumbled in a bunch of, garments and red face and disgust on my part and anger. Nobody said a word. The family I was staying with was the choir, as it turns out. They said nothing, even as we're walking home. So I asked, I broke it. I broke the silence. In my broken Spanish, I said, hey, did you notice something happened to me at Mass? They're like, sí, padre, kind of sheepishly. And so I started laughing. I said, wasn't that funny? I finally broke myself. And then we all started laughing, and thus began more love, more faith, and I started getting over myself. Well, I had felt misunderstood and alone in my first days. Eventually, I came to love being there, and I love the people. Something I noticed is, and I hear the scriptures kind of anew today, where God has given the poor richness in faith. The people I was staying with were not wealthy by any stretch that we might consider, but their love and their faith was potent. And I started thinking how either selfish I am or driven I am by stuff. Their life spoke to me. My eyes were opened and my ears opened to a new way of living. I cherish that time. And I'm thank God for things like technology, because I can now communicate with that family back in Mexico. So I don't know what your stories are. We probably all have some. If you've traveled to a foreign country where English is not the prevailing language, you may have had something similar, feeling cut off or misunderstood. I've said things in Spanish, unawares, that are swear words. I've said things that are ridiculous and scandalizing, not knowing what I've said. And then somebody that speaks Spanish comes up to me and said, Father, did you know you just said this? I'm like, oh my goodness. I won't tell you what they are here, but you can ask me after Mass. But simple things like ordering food or looking for the bathroom, they can cause all kinds of stress, because in a way we're kind of blind. Even though we can speak, we can't see and navigate our areas. And anxiety can build up in our hearts. And in my case, it took many weeks before I felt comfortable to say anything to my host family. But I'm so grateful for them. They taught me so much about culture, my own culture, and the richness in theirs. So today's not unusual. It doesn't have to be in a foreign country, but here in our own country, it is not unusual to be confused, felt misunderstood, and wonder if anyone cares. But this is important to be reminded. Jesus showed his care in the scriptures. We hear how he touched the deaf man and healed him. He started to speak plainly. Jesus let him know how precious he was and how much he cared for him, and that he was even doing so by touching him. We might not think that's much, but it's a big deal. Later today, I'll be going to see someone who was recovering from COVID, and I'm going to anoint that person. Part of that ritual is I have to touch them. Have we not struggled when we're kind of not touching each other, not hugging each other, having our distance? It's disruptive to who we are as people built for communion. And while it may be a necessary evil now, I look forward to the day when we can go back. Now imagine this deaf man who had this impediment. Imagine the first words he heard were from his God, our Lord Jesus Christ. Imagine the first thing. You see, the good news is that Jesus wants to do the same for us. Maybe we have been blind or deaf to his word, even though we are Christians. Something may have happened, and we've turned off. I've done this. And it happens when great loss occurs, or other things. And we shut down, we get angry, we build up walls. But know that Jesus is always speaking to us. I guess my question is, are we listening? Because in those difficult times, we are tempted not to listen. But his words are all the more potent if we would. There's so much confusion these days. There's so much gaslighting, and you can look that up, that we don't even know what to say. There's so much noise going on that we can barely hear. So many people are claiming the truth, and it causes us to become confused about our own sense of reality. The good news is that Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. That is not an ideology. That's a person. He wants to bring clarity to our vision and words of praise on our voice. He wants us to know the truth, which will set us free. And it is not found in the latest so-called popular experts on YouTube or Facebook. We Catholics have the scriptures. We have sacred tradition. We have the sacraments. And we have the magisterium, which guides us and ties them all together and helps us to interpret them in the time that we live. All of these are ways in which Jesus has spoken to us and continues to speak to us. And those are just a few. Today at Mass, maybe bring forward in your heart anything that causes you confusion. Anything that is painful. Isolation. Maybe frustration or fear. Loss. Maybe there's health concerns, or someone you know has health concerns. Maybe you're working in a dangerous environment. Let us silently then ask Jesus to touch us and heal us. May he open our hearts and minds to let go of all anxieties. Hear those words again. That phrase in Aramaic that Jesus spoke, Ephatha, which means to be opened. Ephatha, or abrete in Spanish. And come forward at communion time and let him touch you. Think about this. You might say, well, how can Jesus touch me? The Eucharist, my friends. It is his body and blood, soul and divinity. And he touches you like a bridegroom to a bride, telling you he loves you, feeding you, healing you, and bringing you peace. Thank you again for listening to this episode of the Father Bill's podcast. If you have any questions, just go to my website, fatherbill.org. That's FRBILL.org. And there you can email me directly. You can see what's going on my social media. I have Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. And I'll do my best to get back to you as soon as I can. In the meantime, may God bless you, stay safe, and have a great week. Bye-bye.